The breaking point at my brother's birthday party, my sister handed out gifts only to the children who deserved them. She gave my son a small bag with a note that read, "Try harder next year." I said nothing. We left in silence. The next morning, my sister's screams could be heard throughout the entire neighborhood. I'm Sarah. I'm 35 years old, and I'm the mother of Jake, my 9-year-old son. My life has always been a competition with my older brother Michael, who's 42. Since we were children, my family seemed to put him on a pedestal. Michael was the star, better grades, more friends, and my father Robert always bragged about him. I was the one who could do better. I wasn't lacking in love, but I always felt like I was living in Michael's shadow, as if I was never enough. Jake is my everything. His father and I separated when he was 4, and since then I've done my best to be a good mother. I live for his laughter and his hugs, but sometimes I can't protect him from my family, and that kills me. Everything exploded at my brother's birthday party, an annual gathering that my father organizes. It sounds nice, but it always ends in comparisons and tensions. This year, the party was at my father's house, a large house he inherited from my grandfather when he died 12 years ago. My father and Michael lived there with Michael's children, Emma, who's 11, and Sam, who's 8. I live in a simple apartment with Jake just a few blocks away. I've always felt like a stranger in that house. Even though I'm Robert's daughter, Jake was excited about the party all week, talking about playing with his cousins. "Mom, maybe they'll let me use their new toys," he said, putting on his red shirt. I smiled at him, though inside I felt a knot. I knew the party wouldn't be that simple. It never is. We arrived at 3 p.m. The backyard had balloons, lights, and a table with food, sandwiches, cupcakes, and a huge cake. The kids were running around. Adults were chatting. Michael was at the center telling stories about his work as a supervisor. Everyone listened to him, and my father looked proud. "Sarah, you made it," said Robert when he saw me, with a tone that seemed to be evaluating me. "Jake, how handsome you look," he added, hugging him. Jake smiled and ran to find his cousins. I stayed with a bag of gifts for Emma and Sam, a puzzle, and a remote-controlled car. The afternoon passed quickly. The kids played, the adults ate and talked. Michael shone as always, boasting about his children. "Emma is taking piano," he said. "Sam writes stories." Nobody asked about Jake, and I didn't say anything. I didn't want to fall into their game.gift. Time arrived. The kids sat in the backyard with Emma and Sam in the center. Everyone handed out something. Emma got a video game, a ball, and a drone. Sam received a doll, an expensive notebook, and sneakers. Michael applauded as if his children were royalty. Jake watched from the side with a shy smile. It hurt to see him so quiet, but I didn't expect him to be the center of attention. I gave my gifts to Emma and Sam. Michael said a dry "Thanks, Sarah." Then he stood up with a large bag. "This year, only the children who deserve it get something," he announced. With a smile, "You have to earn it." Some adults nodded. Others looked at each other strangely. I felt a chill. This wasn't going to end well. Michael distributed his gifts. He gave Emma an expensive robot for your grades, and gave Sam paints and brushes for being creative. Other kids received candy or cheap toys with comments like, "Keep trying." When it was Jake's turn, Michael gave him a small bag. "For you," he said with a cold smile. Jake opened it and pulled out an old notebook with a note. He read it silently, and his eyes filled with tears. I took the note. It said, "Try harder next year." The silence was heavy. Nobody spoke. My father looked away. The others pretended not to see. Jake sat next to me, hugging me. "Mom, I want to go home," he whispered. My heart broke, but I didn't want to make a scene. "Let's go, little one," I said. I gathered our things and we left without saying goodbye. As we walked to the car, I felt the stares, but nobody said anything. On the way home, Jake didn't speak. He looked out the window, clutching his shirt. I didn't know what to say either. I couldn't explain something so cruel without hurting him more. That night, while he slept, I sat with the note in my hand. The rage grew. It wasn't just about Jake, though that was already too much. It was about everything. The years of comparisons, of feeling less than, of seeing Michael always win. That note to my son was the limit. I couldn't let Jake grow up feeling what I lived through. I had to do something. Then I remembered a detail I had ignored for years. My father's house, where everything happened, wasn't in Robert's name or Michael's name. It was in my name. When my grandfather died, he left a will. The house was mine. I never mentioned it because it didn't seem important. My father and Michael lived there, and I didn't want to fight. But now that truth was my weapon, I decided to act. That night, I drafted a formal eviction letter. It wasn't easy, but every word felt like a step to protect Jake. The next morning, I hired a messenger to deliver the letter to Michael. I didn't want to see him in person, not after what he did. The letter said the house was mine and they had 30 days to leave. I didn't explain more. It wasn't necessary. At 9 in the morning, my phone started ringing. It was Michael. I didn't answer. Then came the messages, one after another, full of insults and questions. How dare you? This is a joke, right? I ignored everything. Half an hour later, I knew things had gotten serious. Michael's screams could be heard from my father's house, 3 blocks from my apartment. The neighbors came out to see what was happening. I didn't go look. I didn't need to. Jake was in his room coloring, oblivious to the chaos. I didn't want him to hear anything, so I ignored Michael's messages that kept coming. Insults, threats. He even said he was going to sue me. That house belongs to Dad, not you, he wrote, over and over. It gave me bitter laughter. He had no idea about the will. Nobody did. Not even Robert. My grandfather confided it to me in secret before he died, and I never brought it up. Until now, at 10 in the morning, my father called. I knew I couldn't avoid him forever, so I answered. Sarah, what did you do? He said with a trembling voice. Michael is devastated. Do you want to throw us out of the house? I rubbed my forehead, tired. Dad, the house is mine. Grandpa made it clear in his will. Silence. Then a whisper. That can't be. You never told me. I didn't have to, I replied. But what Michael did to Jake, I won't let it pass. Robert started with the usual. Michael didn't mean to hurt anyone. He was just being creative. It made me angry. Creative. He humiliated my son in front of everyone. This is over. I hung up before he could insist. I sat on the couch, looking at Michael's note that was still on the table. Try harder next year. Every time I saw it, I felt fire in my chest. It wasn't just about Jake, though that was already enough. It was about the years of comparisons, of hearing my father praise Michael while I was the one who could do better. But hurting my son that I wouldn't tolerate. At 2 in the afternoon, someone knocked on the door as if they wanted to knock it down. I knew who it was. Sarah, open now, shouted Michael. Jake looked up from his room, scared. Stay there, little one, I told him, and went to the door. I didn't want him to come in, so I only opened it a little. Michael was beside himself, with a red face and eyes shooting sparks. How dare you send that letter, he said, pushing the door. I held it firm. That house belongs to Dad, not you. You're wrong, I replied dryly. Grandpa left it to me. It's in my name. It always has been. Michael stood still for a second. Then he let out a sarcastic laugh. You're lying. Grandpa would never do that. You were always the one who didn't matter. That blow hurt, but I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me waver. I'm not lying. Check the papers or talk to a lawyer. He changed strategy, his eyes filled with tears. Sarah, we're family. My children have nowhere to go. Dad isn't well. I knew it was pure theater. Robert was healthy, and Michael always used his children as an excuse. Don't come to me with stories, I said. What you did to Jake was cruel. This is for him. Michael gritted his teeth. It was a note, Sarah. Your son is weak. Teach him to endure. I lost my calm. Don't act like it was just the note, I shouted. My whole life you've tried to make me feel less than. And now you're going after Jake. You have 30 days to leave. He looked at me with hatred. This isn't over, he hissed, and he left, leaving a heavy silence in the hallway. I closed the door with my heart racing. Jake came out of his room and hugged me. Why does Uncle Michael shout so much? He asked. I didn't want to fill him with ugly things. He's angry about something I did, I said. But don't worry, everything will be okay. He nodded, but his eyes said he didn't believe me. It broke my soul to see him like this. That afternoon, the drama got out of control. Michael went to social media, posting in the family WhatsApp group and on Facebook. He said I was a traitor. The sister who wanted to leave him homeless, he called Jake sensitive and said the note was advice to improve. He even uploaded a photo of the note as if that justified it. The comments were a disaster. Some supported him, saying I was heartless. Others attacked me, and a few asked for calm. I didn't respond. I wasn't going to fall into his circus. What hit me hard was Robert. He called me that night crying. Sarah, how can you do this to me? I'm your father. That house is my life. I tried not to lose patience. Dad, I'm not throwing you out. But Michael crossed a line. I can't let him hurt Jake. Robert cried more. Michael didn't want to do harm. He was just being creative. That broke me. Always the same, defending Michael. Dad, I'm not going to argue. The house is mine. End of story. I hung up feeling bad but knowing there was no other option. The following days were crazy. Michael hired a lawyer who sent a letter saying the will could be contested. I wasn't too worried. I had reviewed everything with a lawyer friend and the papers were in order. But Michael didn't stop. More messages, more calls. He even showed up again at my building, shouting at the entrance. The neighbors were already gossiping, and one told me, "Sarah, fix this. We can't sleep." It made me angry, but I didn't respond. I just wanted to protect Jake. Jake was quieter than normal. One night, while we were eating pizza, he asked me, "Mom, does Uncle Michael hate me?" I almost dropped my fork. "No, little one," I said, though I wasn't sure. "Sometimes adults do bad things, but it's not because of you." He nodded, but didn't seem convinced. I decided he needed to get out of this environment. I planned a short trip, just the two of us, to a town, with a lake where he could swim. I wanted to see him smile again. Before we left, the worst fight came. Michael and Robert showed up at my apartment without warning. I opened the door, and there they were. Michael with his arms crossed, Robert with a funeral face. "We need to talk," said Michael, entering without permission. I let them in, but kept Jake in his room with the door closed. I didn't want him to hear. "Withdraw the letter," said Michael, looking at me with contempt. "If not, I'm going to make your life." "Impossible." Robert nodded. "Daughter, please. We're family." I stood my ground. "Family doesn't hurt my son," I said. "Michael, what you did was cruel. And Dad, you always defend him." "I'm fed up." Michael laughed sarcastically. "Poor Sarah. Always the victim. Grow up." My blood boiled. "I'm not the victim. I'm just protecting Jake. You have 25 days. Robert started crying, and Michael pointed at me. "You don't know who you're messing with," he said. "I'm going to fight to the end." They left, and I closed the door, exhausted. Messages from cousins and uncles didn't stop. Some saying I was being unfair, others that Michael had it coming. Even my cousin Mark called trying to mediate. "Sarah, I understand why you're angry, but throwing them out ... it's harsh." "Mark," I said, "I'm not going to let Jake grow up feeling what I felt my whole life." Michael crossed a line. He sighed but didn't insist. The trip with Jake was a relief. We spent 2 days at the lake, swimming, eating ice cream, laughing. For a moment, I felt like everything could get better. But when we returned, the drama was still there. Michael was sending messages, the lawyer was sending letters, and Robert kept calling asking me to reconsider. I even found out from a cousin that Michael was gathering the family to do something against me. I didn't know what, but I wasn't going to wait around to find out. We returned from the lake trip with Jake smiling, but the weight of the family drama was still waiting for me. My phone had unread messages from Michael, more letters from the lawyer he hired, and missed calls from my father Robert. Michael was moving heaven and earth to fight for the house, the same one that had been in my name since my grandfather died 12 years ago. All this started because Michael humiliated my son Jake at my brother's birthday party, giving him an old notebook with a note that said, "Try harder next year." That was the push I needed to bring the truth about the house to light and put a stop to years of comparisons and contempt. The first days after the trip, I tried to keep Jake out of it. He played in his room, went to school, and seemed to be recovering his spark. But I knew Michael wouldn't give up. His messages were getting more aggressive. "You're not going to win, Sarah. This is a betrayal of the family." He even uploaded a video to the family WhatsApp group crying, saying I wanted to leave his children on the street. Some cousins believed him, and I got messages saying I was being cruel. Others, like my cousin Mark, wrote to me privately saying they understood why I was doing it, but to be careful. "Michael is turning everyone against you," he warned me. I wasn't surprised. Michael had always been the king of appearances, the one who convinced everyone he was the victim. But this time, I wasn't going to fall for his game. I reviewed the house papers with my lawyer friend Stephen, who confirmed the will was solid. "They have nothing, Sarah," he told me. "The will is clear and the house has been in your name from the beginning. Let them do what they want. They're not going to win." That gave me some calm, but I knew the drama wouldn't end with papers. One morning, while I was taking Jake to school, I got a call from an unknown number. It was a neighbor from my father's house, Helen, a lady who was always aware of everything. "Sarah, you need to come," she said nervously. "Michael is at the house, shouting, saying he's not going to leave. There's a lawyer with him, and your dad is crying on the porch." I sighed. I didn't want more fights, but I couldn't ignore it. "Thanks, Helen," I said and hung up. I dropped Jake off at school and drove to the house. When I arrived, the spectacle was just as Helen described it. Michael was in the yard shouting at a man in a suit who I assumed was his lawyer. Robert was sitting in a chair on the porch with his face in his hands. Some neighbors were watching from their windows, and a couple of cousins who lived nearby were on the sidewalk murmuring. I got out of the car and walked toward Michael, who saw me and approached as if he wanted to tear my head off. "Here's the traitor," he shouted, pointing at me. "You want to throw us out, don't you? You're not going to get away with this." The lawyer, a guy with a bored face, approached. "Ma'am, I'm Laura Gomez's representative. We're contesting the will. There are irregularities." I crossed my arms. "There are no irregularities," I said calmly. "The house is mine. Talk to my lawyer if you want, but you're not going to change anything." Michael let out a sarcastic laugh. "You were always a loser, Sarah. Do you think you can go against me?" I didn't respond to him. I looked at Robert, who raised his eyes with tears. "Daughter, please stop this," he murmured. That hurt me, but I didn't give in. "Dad, I'm not doing this for fun. Michael hurt Jake. I'm not going to let him continue." Michael butted in. "Oh, please, it was a note. Your son is spoiled." I lost my patience. "Don't act like it was just the note," I said, raising my voice. "My whole life you made me feel less than. And now you're going after Jake? It's over." The lawyer tried to calm things down, but Michael didn't stop. The neighbors started recording with their phones, and I knew this was going to go viral in the neighborhood. I didn't want more circus, so I turned around. "You have 20 days, I said, and got in the car. Michael shouted something I didn't understand, and Robert stayed on the porch without moving. That night, while Jake slept, I sat thinking, I didn't want to continue in this war. Not for me, but for Jake. He didn't deserve to grow up in an environment where his uncle humiliated him and his grandfather always defended the guilty party. But I also couldn't let Michael get away with it. I decided I needed a plan to close this once and for all. Not just for the house, but for my peace and Jake's. The next day, I talked to Stephen. I told him everything. The fight, the threats, Michael's publications. "I want to end this," I said. "I don't want Jake to grow up with this poison." Stephen nodded. "You can sell the house," he suggested. "It's yours and you have no obligation to let them live there. If you sell it, you cut the problem at the root." The idea made me dizzy. Selling the house where I grew up, where my grandfather spent his last days, wasn't easy. But I thought about Jake, about his sad little face after the party, and I knew it was the right thing to do. I started moving quickly. I contacted a real estate agency and put the house up for sale. I didn't tell Robert or Michael anything. I knew that if they found out, they would cause a scandal before I could do anything. The real estate agency worked fast, and in a week I already had a solid offer from a young couple who wanted to move to the neighborhood. I accepted and signed the papers with Stephen present. The house sold for a good price, enough to secure Jake's future and start over somewhere else. When Michael and Robert found out, it was like a hurricane had passed through the neighborhood. Michael called me screaming so much I could barely understand. "You sold the house. How could you? That was my house." "It wasn't yours," I replied coldly, "and it's already done. You have 15 days to leave." Robert also called crying. "Sarah, you're my daughter. How are you doing this to me?" I tried not to let myself be carried away by guilt. "Dad, you always defended Michael, even when he hurt. Jake, this is for my son." I hung up, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something like freedom. Michael didn't give up. He tried everything. He talked to the real estate agency, saying the sale was illegal. He went to the police, claiming I had forged the will. He even organized a family meeting where he asked everyone to make me see reason. But nothing worked. The papers were clear, the sale was legal, and Stephen made sure everything was in order. The cousins who supported Michael gradually fell silent. And some, like Mark, even wrote to me to say they understood my decision. The day Michael and Robert moved out, I didn't go to the house. I didn't want more fights.